What's going on, everybody? I want to thank you for tuning in to another edition of the Steel Trap Mind Show with your host, Andrew Carter.
Jennifer Bolton.
And today we're going to follow up from our topic yesterday, looking at Lyn Alden, I have the book right here, Broken Money, one of the best books I've read on economics, finance, the money system in a long time. I mean, really groundbreaking book. So last time we covered the first two chapters, which kind of did a broad overview going back thousands of years of the history of money. We looked at how money started as a social contract, people owing each other favors in small groups, and it was flexible that way. Eventually, when you get to too many people, and there's 500, 600 people, it's too big and disorganized to have social cred between people. So that was when commodity monies, physical commodities, be it shells, beads, tobacco, etc., came into play. And then where we concluded was that it's happened over and over throughout history where two commodities really end up taking over as the commodity monies that are available. Gold and silver.
And what's really interesting is that these two commodities have stood the test of time. They've been valued for thousands of years. Is that right?
Right, going back to antiquity,
Yeah.
you see it constantly. All commodity monies are losing out to gold and silver. And even look at ancient Egypt going back, 10,000 BC plus. I mean, gold is always looked at as the money of kings and aristocrats.
The clergy.
Yeah, I mean, as the clergy, as far back as we're going, it's basically valued at that premium.
And it helps me understand the old timers. Gold, invest in gold. We know the people. It's all about gold.
Yeah, the doom and gloomers.
Gold will save us. But it's making me, so the thing is that this chapter has caused me to appreciate the commodities and gold and silver and the test of time, and it's a store of value, and it's a better store of value than the U.S. dollar over a really long period of time.
Right, well, I don't think money's meant to be a store of value. It's more a meme of its change, but it's interesting with gold because going back thousands of years and why does something have value? How come it's a store of value through space and time? Well, the number one reason is that anything that has value is just what we perceive. It's what we're deciding has value, what we're what we're applying to it.
So, but the gold has some interesting attributes that has caused it to stand the test of time, and we talked a little bit about that last time. So, we only increase the gold supply by 2% every year.
Right, so two things make gold and silver so much more valuable than the other commodity monies and lead to them beating out the other commodities. The big ones are the stock-to-flow ratio. Mm-hmm. Now, stock-to-flow ratio is the supply of gold divided by the production, how much is being used. Mm-hmm. And so most commodity monies are failing over time because the supply is dwindling. So, for example, be it like rhodium or tobacco.
They're being used, so the supply is going down.
Right, so you could produce 1 million pounds of tobacco, or you could have 1 million tons of rhodium produced in a given year. But then demand might be, 900,000. So you have a supply, but the supply is not steady because there's so much demand. So there's no hardness to it. Where with gold, you look at the supply remaining pretty constant because not a lot of it is used in production, and despite technological leaps, mining so much gold from the earth, we're not able to increase the supply by a steady amount.
It would have to be like a science fiction type technology.
Well,
which I've heard people talk about, by the way.
It had to be like asteroid mining.
Yes.
Like if an asteroid hit Earth, or we went and sent ships in. I know this sounds crazy, but
no, I've heard it, literally heard it as an argument that we need to go to, actually for crypto, that we need to go to cryptocurrencies because we could mine an asteroid and then totally flood the market with gold and devalue gold. I've totally heard it.
Well, that's with Elon Musk and Bezos, all the all the big tech guys who are like Bond villains going to space. When they're looking at how to monetize space and how to make money, that's the big thing is asteroid mining. So here on Earth, the supply of gold remains steady. We can't add as much supply through production. Again, it had to be a huge technological leap or some unforeseen event like an asteroid hitting the Earth or us mining an asteroid.
Yeah, and Lyn does a good job explaining that over time, monies have lost their value, and it's always due to a group of people coming in with an advanced technology that can debase the money. Yeah,
so there's certain commodities where they'll work for a couple hundred years as commodity money, but again, a new technology, the supply might increase quickly. So oil, for example, oil was used as a commodity by countries at one point, but look back the last 500 years, we've had so many even the last 10 years, like we're always inventing new ways to extract oil, find new reserves. They had hydraulic fracking, horizontal drilling. So what you see when the supply is in a commodity is not steady, and again, the supply is ultimately controlled by nature, it doesn't work for a commodity money. So,
but then oil is always being consumed, so...
Right. So those are the two big characteristics with the stock-to-flow ratio. Not too much of it can be consumed, then also you can't have a lot of supply coming on the market. So that's when we see gold and silver. Again, not a lot of it is being consumed, and we're not having like huge amounts of supply. So the high stock-to-flow ratio is what is making those commodities dominant as forms of money.
So we've talked about how it would take some type of radical technology to increase the supply of gold anytime soon. And we've talked about how the stock-to-flow ratio remains mostly unchanged and the supply increases by 2% a year. So Lyn goes into, she has a chapter about debasing silver and gold coins, and mainly silver coins, because for years, for a very, very long time, silver coins was, the liquidity of a country. Did you read that part?
Yeah, so the way it's described, like gold has way more value than silver. An ounce of gold is approximately like $2,000, where an ounce of silver is about 20. So we mentioned how gold was the money of kings and aristocrats, the rich people. So when something is that valuable, you're not using it for small, everyday purchases. So we begin to see silver become the means of exchange for peasants, serfs, people lower on the economic ladder. Because it's a currency is less. So we see populism throughout history where gold is associated with the bankers, the wealthy, and then silver is the money of everyday people.
Yeah, and she talked about how the king could take the silver and put less precious metal in it, melt it down, put less precious metal in it, and then make more coins and put more coins into the system and to spend, and that it would like slowly debase the currency over time.
Right, because that's an argument used for having gold and silver as money, is because it's nature controls the ledger. It's not as easy to debase it. But what kings and powerful people are figuring out is you could have a silver coin that might be 90% silver, and then they have a war or a plague, something happen, and they're having to figure out how can we raise more money, how can we get money into the treasury, and they say, well, maybe the silver coin, instead of it being 90% silver, we'll make it 80%. and so then they're increasing the supply of money, and then the people who are using that money to spend day to day, they're not realizing it's debased until way after the fact. So the inflation, because it's thousands of years ago, hundreds of years, the mechanism, the transmission for inflation is not instantaneous. It's taking longer.
Yeah, it takes longer, but after a while, it takes decades. But after a while, you've debased your currency. So that was really interesting because it reminds me so much of what's happening now with just pushing a button and printing money. Is whenever you are flooding the economy with extra money, you're lowering the value. And it was true in ancient Roman times with lowering the precious metal content of the coins, and it's still true today. So it's like the same forces. That was my own correlation when I was reading it.
Right, the same theme, applies throughout history, where money's being debased or money's being printed in times of war, times of plague. Raising taxes is not a popular solution, and you have to go through the legislative process. It takes too long. So if you have a need for funding a crisis or war of some kind, debase the currency. Printing new money in circulation is the way to do it, because it doesn't always require a legislative act. You can go around typical channels, and then people don't even realize it until after the fact.
Yeah,
basically.
you have the money for that war, and then you don't have to deal with the inflation and those issues till later. Okay, so she talked about how a governing body can standardize a unit of gold, and then that unit's more valuable. Do you remember that part? She talked about like the American Eagle gold coins.
How they can do what to it?
Well, like you can have like the government issues these American Eagle gold coins, for instance, and that they're easier. That you're establishing, the United States is like establishing the value. Like this unit of an American gold coin is worth this much, and so they're worth more than like if you bring in your solid gold jewelry, because they've got to weigh that, figure out how much it is, figure out how pure it is, and because you don't have all that, like the standardization of gold, it's easier to trade.
Yeah, it's one of the problems with using gold as currency is any currency has to be verifiable. That was one of the characteristics we talked about last time. And yeah, with gold, they have to weigh it. They have to put it through acid leaching tests to make sure it's not pyrite. So when the government comes into play and gets involved with the currency system with gold, they can put a seal on it to verify. And so then there's more government involvement because it's more convenient, and it makes it more
Have you
visible.
seen one of these American Eagle gold coins before?
I looked it up, so I was curious. So there's a premium on it because an ounce of gold is whatever $2,000, and I mean you're paying. I'm approximating pretty hard. You're paying another $400 or $500 on top of that. But the benefit is you're buying it directly from the government, not from a merchant or a bullion dealer, and it's verifiable that way.
Yeah.
Because when it has the U.S. seal of approval on it, and then again you're not having to mess with getting it weighed, doing all this testing, getting it shipped or whatever.
I'm putting you on the spot here, but do you remember how much one is worth right now?
I want to say how much gold is in it.
I don't know. We'll have to look it up. I'm putting you on the spot because we can't look it up right now.
Is it 1900?
Are they really that much? One gold?
Well, because there's not a full ounce in it. I don't know what the weighting is, but I mean, if you want to buy gold, know that it's legit. Have it physical. That's probably the easiest way to do it.
So is it not a bad idea to have some of these gold coins like put in a safe somewhere?
I mean, if you want to store a value, I think and again, we don't give financial advice on this podcast,
no.
but most financial advisors, they might advise 5 to 10% of your money in gold,
and just have it in your
safe? Have it in a safe as a store value.
So should it be like in a safe in your home, or should it be like in a safe deposit box in the bank? Like, where do you put your gold coins? Like, it's not safe to have it in your home, right? Like these are the things I think about. Like where do I put my gold coins?
Yeah, I mean, you could have it custodied somewhere, and then that way you're not having to worry about theft or anything like that.
Now, did your grandfather ever have gold coins?
I don't
As
know.
part of his
He
portfolio?
probably did somewhere, somewhere stashed away.
So I'm asking all the questions. So when we moved to this gold standard and we had gold backed and we had paper currency backed by gold, it really changed things.
Yeah, I mean, it became a game changer. It brought the government and banks more involved in the money creation process as well.
And then, according to Lyn, that was the beginning of the fractional reserve banking because they knew everyone was not going to pull their gold all out at once. So they began to issue more notes than they had gold.
Right.
Wow. So that all begins.
Mm-hmm.
So the next time we're going to talk about...
We're going to look at a history of the gold standard, the silver standard, and kind of find out what the gold standard is, how the mechanism worked, and it controlled the money supply and the government involvement, and then we'll look at why it broke down and how come it was not a viable economic standard long term. We're going to talk about that next time. But no, hey, in summing up, we looked at, once again, Chapter 3 of Broken Money, talked about stock-to-flow ratio, hardness, the two main reasons why gold and silver beat out all the other currencies. They were able to maintain a steady supply, not have too much new supply coming on the market, not have too much being consumed, and look at the significance of those two metals and with their hardness, beating out all their commodity monies. But next time we'll delve further, look at the gold standard, and just again some of the successes, failures, and even talk about if that is viable, bringing it back. But anyway, I want to thank you guys for tuning in to the Steel Trap Mind Show with your host, Andrew Carter.
Jennifer Bolton.
Take care, guys.